I was told an awful story recently about a parish, not ours thank goodness, that had quite a wealthy woman who would always sit in the front row of the church. And when she didn't like the priest's sermon, to show her disapproval, she would drop a threepence into the collection basket. Now kids, a threepence is like a 5-cent piece, a very small amount to give for someone who was known to be wealthy. So one day, when the woman didn't like the sermon, she dropped the threepence in, very loudly clinking into the basket, and the priest stood up, walked down the front row, took the threepence out and threw it back at her. Isn't that awful? They were both acting horribly, the priest and the woman, the exact opposite of what we hear in that beautiful story in the gospel today, of the poor widow who gives only a small amount to the temple treasury, but for her it's a lot. It's a big act of generosity on her part. And Jesus, who affirms that with such gratitude. We learn a lot in this little story. And of course, the central message is that giving is a good thing. Giving is good not just because of the good our giving can do for the recipients, but the giving is good for us. It's a virtue for us to exercise and develop generosity. We as Australians are quite often generous when there's a big cause to give to. We are very generous when there's a fire, a flood, or an earthquake. And of course, all those have happened in recent times. But we are less good at developing the habit of regular, continuous giving. And it's that I'd like to speak about today. Giving is good for us. And there's a couple of reasons why I think it's particularly good. One is it's an act of love. It's an act of love for others, maybe who I don't know and will never meet, but it's about me giving something of myself and my means to them. It's an act of compassion, pity, mercy. It's also an act of trust, that I trust that others are in more need than I am, and I trust those who run that charity will be able to do good with the money I offer them. So it's a great act of openness of ourselves, and we need to monitor that for ourselves when we feel a reluctance to give. It's also good because it's healthy for us to live a little bit beneath our means. If I only ever spend 90% of my income rather than 100%, firstly, I'm consuming less. I'm consuming less of the world's resources, and that's a good thing ecologically as well as other ways. But it also builds a bit of a buffer into my lifestyle that should I hit a crisis sometime, I've actually got a little bit of a buffer of a few percent in my expenditure that maybe I can use if I need to. But interestingly, people who are consistently generous, who give a regular amount to charity, very rarely pull back on that when they fall short themselves. It's often other things they'll pull back instead because they've made giving such a priority. Again, see point 1, the habit of generosity. So how are we to develop that virtue when there is such competition for our giving dollar? There are so many very good charities all competing, increasingly sophisticated and sometimes almost aggressive ways for us to give. We get bombarded by phone calls, mail-outs, requests in person on the street, sadly even in church, and even on social media. So how are we to manage giving? I want to suggest a few things in this homily that might be of help. One is to firstly make the commitment that I will give. That simply choosing to give and choosing to look at my own finances saying, I'm going to give regularly is an important first step. And then to choose a percentage of your income that you will give. Now in the Old Testament, tithing was a thing. You had to give 10% of your produce. Many Christian churches insist that you give 10% to church, but we absolutely don't do that. But I do think there's merit in the idea of percentage. So choose a percentage. If it's 3 or 5 or 7 or 10%, look at your own income and say, here is the amount I choose to give to charity overall. And then I'm happy to say, if someone was to ask me or I stand before God one day in judgment, I say, I'm glad that I gave this amount. So choose the amount and then make ways to give that amount. And choose the charities, and I think charities plural is probably the way to go. The small number of good charities you want to give to, you want to commit to supporting. I've actually done that throughout my life. I began giving a certain percentage many years ago when I was young and delivering pizzas one night a week. My income was very small, so my percentage I gave was pretty small too. But over the years, my income has grown. Then I'm actually giving at the same percentage a greater dollar amount. I'll tell you at the end who I choose to give to, but it's good to look and see which charities do I think actually can do the most good, which are the charities I care about. And when we choose those charities, suddenly we'll find that actually it raises our awareness, I think, even more. We're probably already aware of certain needs, but if we choose to give to certain charities, we then open our eyes and our ears and our minds and our hearts even to pray more about the causes this supports. I'm not a betting man, but if I bet on the Melbourne Cup, I would have actually probably been interested in watching the Melbourne Cup and seeing what was going on. So too, if you bet on a football game or two flies crawling up a wall, then you're probably more invested in paying attention to that. And so too when we give. If you give to an overseas aid agency, you probably then start to notice more the trends around global welfare, global famine, global giving. If you give to an Australian welfare, then you probably start to notice more about government funding and figures on homelessness and need. If you give to cancer research charities, you probably notice then more the news about cancer research, etc. So we probably already have an openness and interest, but when we give, we get invested, we get skin in the game, and so we'll care more, we will lobby, we will probably advocate more towards government and others for that cause as well. And that makes something consistent, which is more than just my dollars. It's me being invested as a whole person in caring and supporting. So once we've done that, then I think it can give us some confidence to say, well, I will choose to commit to give these regular amounts to these regular charities. That then gives me a bit of comfort when I get confronted in the street or elsewhere by someone asking me to give. I can with some confidence say no to them, not because I'm being stingy, but because I know because I have given to a charity that in some way supports them in perhaps a better way than giving the dollar on the street might do. So there's a great tool we can use in selecting charities. It's the ACNC, the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Register. You can go on that and simply search your charity's name and have a look, and it will tell you that they're registered, they're legitimate. It will tell you, it'll also show you a bit of a breakdown of their finances, what their income and their expenditure is on. That's helpful to know how much of the dollar I give actually goes to the end cause and how much might get taken up in administration and advertising. And that for me is a great key to who I want to give to. The more advertising you see for a charity, chances are the more money has been spent on that and the less that actually goes to the end to the end person in need. So I give personally to Caritas Australia. It's the Catholic Welfare Overseas Development Agency, which we know best as Project Compassion every Lent. I give a regular fixed amount every month by credit card, and all I get every year is one single statement in the mail. It's my tax invoice. It gives me a quick summary and gives me a link that I can then go and read up on the website what they've actually given to. No glossy magazines, no monthly letters saying you're such a good donor, so please give more. None of the expenditure, I feel very little of the expenditure has gone into that administration and marketing, which means I have confidence that more of it actually goes to the end user. That's the research I've done for my own charity giving, but I invite you to do yours as well, to find the charities which are right for you, that you want to give to, you want to support to, that can allow you to deepen and grow that virtue of committed generosity, so that you might be like the widow in the story, not in the amount you give, but in having that sustained virtue of generosity, that Jesus might look at you and say, yes, this is good, well done.